welcome to my video where I'm going to show you how to make some Christmas biscuits. So they've got ginger and cinnamon in to make them nice and flavoursome. So for your ingredients, we've got 200 grams of self-raising flour, 100 grams of butter, 100 grams of light brown soft sugar, 50 grams of golden syrup, a large egg. Then in there I've got 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 2 teaspoons of ginger. Then I've got my baking powder and I've got some salt, and then you've got the optional icing sugar to decorate. So the first thing we're going to do is get out an electric whisk and a glass bowl. So the first thing we're going to add to our bowl is our 100 grams of butter. And then we're going to add our 100 grams of light brown soft sugar. And what you want to do is pop your electric whisk on a low setting first of all, just so you're not going to flick all of the ingredients too far around your kitchen. And then we want to gradually up the speed as our mixture comes together to get lots of air into our mixture. So I'm just going to start this off on slow. So you're much better having your butter at room temperature. If you get your butter straight out of the fridge, it's going to be really hard to work with. So just let it warm up to room temperature for about half an hour before you're going to use it. So weigh out the amount you'll need for your biscuits and then you can use that. So it's gradually starting to come together. What we want to do when we're doing this is add lots of air into our biscuit mixture, so we get nice airy biscuits. So we're doing that by whisking air in as we're creaming together our butter and sugar. And then when we pop that in the oven, the air that we trap will expand and make our biscuits rise. We're also using self-raising flour, and we're using bicarbonate of soda, which will also help our biscuits rise from a chemical reaction. I'm just gradually upping the speed. And you'll notice how the mixture increases in size as we're trapping more and more air into our butter and sugar. So we want to get a nice smooth mixture. So gradually turn your whisk off in your bowl. And then we don't want to waste any of our mixture, so any remaining butter and sugar mix on our whisk blades we can just scrape off and add back to our bowl. And the next thing we're going to do is gradually add in our egg. Just move that to one side. So just double check your egg's okay in terms of there's no visible damage on the outside, it's within date. And I always suggest using a knife to give a good firm tap on your egg rather than using the side of a bowl and risking half of your egg going on the work surface. Get your thumbs in to pull your eggshell apart, pop that to one side, and then give that a quick whisk with a fork. Make sure you're keeping your hands nice and clean, because we're obviously using raw egg for this, so we want to keep our work surface clean as well. So we're going to bring our bowl back, add our egg mixture in, and then gradually add our whisk and whisk that back up again. So then we can pop our whisk to one side, we don't need that again, so you can get rid of your blades and pop those in for washing up. And then what we want to do is add in the rest of our ingredients. So the first ingredient we've got is our golden syrup, so a little bit more sweetness in our mixture. So I'm just going to scoop that into our bowl. Make sure you're not wasting any. So you've got the right proportions of everything. Then I'm going to add my ginger and cinnamon. And then, as I say, for another bit of raising agent, we're going to have half a teaspoon of baking powder. So I've got a half teaspoon measure here. You don't want to add too much of this because it will affect the flavour if you add too much. So in this case, less is more. So just make sure you've got the correct amount. And then if you've used unsalted butter, you possibly won't need to, if you've used salted butter, you probably won't need to add any, but I've used unsalted, so we can just add 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. So again, just a little bit more flavour. If you have got a particularly salty taste in your mouth, you might want to avoid adding any more. But you can just play that by your taste. And then the last ingredient is our flour. And then we're going to give that a good mix round. And what we want to do is form our biscuit dough. So what I would suggest with this is that you don't necessarily put your oven on to warm up right at the beginning of cooking, because what we want to do is pop our mixture into the fridge wrapped in cling film or in a plastic bag, just to chill for between 30 and 60 minutes, just to allow the butter to sort of solidify a little bit more and make our mixture a little bit easier to handle. So give your ingredients a good whisk round. So we're mixing all of those spices evenly throughout together with our raising agent. And we should get a nice biscuit colour coming through. If you push your spoon down into your bowl, that just helps the mixture come together that little bit more. So it also helps clean your bowl, making sure there's no flour stuck to the edge. And once your mixtures come together a little bit like that has now, what we can do is just scrape off our spoon. And for the last little bit, we can just use our hands to bring that mixture together. Into our dough. So we're not sort of kneading it like you would bread. We're just bringing our mixture together. We don't want to overhandle this, but we want to make sure all of our ingredients come together nicely, and we've got a nice smooth dough that we can just pop in the fridge for 30 to 60 minutes just to allow that to chill. So I've allowed my mixture to chill. I've got a baking sheet that I've just lined with a sheet of baking or greaseproof paper. So we're going to pop that to one side. You might well need 2 trays for this, and if you're going to make different size biscuits, then just make sure you're putting the similar size biscuits on the same tray so that they have an even cooking time. Then I'm just going to pop a little bit of flour down on our work surface just to help stop my mixture from sticking, and then get my dough out of the bag where it's been nicely chilling. Just give that a light coating with the flour and just push it a little bit down with your hands just to help. It does tend to sort of crack a little bit when you first start rolling it out, but as you start warming up that butter, that will stop. So you're just rolling it in one direction and then pick up your dough, turn it, and then roll it again. This way you get a nice even sort of roll. What you want is your dough to be of an even thickness, so that again your biscuits are going to cook nice and evenly. So just keep just sort of picking it up, turning it round using a nice even pressure. And what we're trying to do is roll our dough out to be roughly 1/2 centimetre thick. And you can use whatever sort of biscuit cutters you've got to hand. They can be just sort of round sort of cutters, or if you've got some Christmas ones, I've got a few different ones. I've got a star, a snowman, and a ginger person. So we can decorate and cut our biscuits into whatever shape we want. So quite often people find that ginger can be a little bit settling if you've got a bit of a queasy stomach. You might well find that helps a little bit. And the ginger and cinnamon add a good bit of flavour, so if taste is a bit of an issue for you, then you might well find that that helps. So keep picking up your dough and turning it just to make sure it's not sticking to the work surface. And when you've got it roughly 1/2 centimetre thick and you're happy with that, then what you want to do is start cutting out your biscuit shapes. So just make sure they're as even sort of, you're making the most of your pastry really, so you're not having to roll it out too many times. So you're cutting out your biscuit shapes and popping those on your baking tray. And you can re-roll this as many times as it takes to use up all of your dough. You don't want to be wasting any of this. But you can see roughly how thick my biscuits are. And then I've got a few star shapes as well. So we're going to carry on cutting this until we've got our biscuits cut there. I'm popping all those on our baking sheet. So get another biscuit out there. And then we're going to bring our mixture together You might find this second roll, it cracks a lot less because you will have started to warm it up. But say you want to roll it out the minimum number of times you can, so do make the most of the biscuits you've cut. Just squeeze your mixture back together again. Make sure you've still got a little bit of flour. The more you roll it out, the stickier your dough will be, so you might potentially have to actually coat your rolling pin and a little bit of flour as well. And then you can re-roll just as we did at the beginning, turning it round until we've rolled it back out to our 1/2 centimetre thick, and then you can repeat the process and recut the rest of your biscuits. So you see how much more even size this time. It's a bit easier to handle as we've warmed up the butter, but you do get a much sharper shape if you've popped it in the fridge to your biscuits. So we'll keep cutting those out until we've used up all our dough, and then we can keep repeating this until we've used up all of our biscuit dough. So I'm down to my last little piece of dough, and I'm just going to flatten that out and smooth it round so I've got an actual biscuit shape, because you don't want to waste any, and you can always try that one to make sure you're happy with your dough before giving it to other people. So on my tray, you'll see that I've just spaced out my biscuits quite well, because don't forget we've got those raising agents in there, so they will spread a little bit. So they're nicely spread out on my tray. They don't take too long to cook, and they're much better if they're not overcooked and too crunchy, so do keep a close eye on them. The guide for cooking them is about 15 to 18 minutes, but it does fully depend on your oven. Mine tend to cook a lot quicker in my oven, and they'll take about sort of 12 minutes. So pop those in the oven until they're lightly golden. So while our biscuits have been cooking, they're still in the oven, I've just cleaned down my work surface. Don't forget we had raw egg on that, so I've given that a good clean down. And then we're going to make our optional topping. So I've got my 50 grams of icing sugar, and we're just going to add a teaspoon of cold water and give that a stir round. And you're just going to gradually keep adding your teaspoons of water until you get a mixture that will just drop off your spoon. So you want to make it relatively easy to pipe, but just gradually add the water, just so you don't get too liquidy a mix. If you do, you can always add a little bit more icing sugar to it. So we're just going to mix that round. So another teaspoon in there. So that's my third. That should be enough. Just give that a good stir around to remove any lumps of icing sugar. If it's been stored for a little while, it will just soak up a little bit of moisture from the air and might just clump together. So we're just mixing that round to form a nice smooth mixture. So it should just pour off a spoon, and then that'll be nice and easy to pipe with. Then if you've got some piping bags, brilliant, but if you haven't, you can always make your own with a bit more greaseproof paper. So I've got a rectangle of my baking paper, and I'm just going to fold that over to form a triangle. Then we're going to trim down there and discard this a little bit. And then with our triangle, I'm going to cut along that middle line. Or with our square, rather, we're going to cut down that middle line to form 2 triangles. Then with one of the triangles, we're going to face the long edge towards us and bring one of those corners over, so you're flicking it sort of over on itself to join at the top there, so you get a little cone shape. And then with that other edge, you're wrapping that round, so you've got all 3 points together. Then you're going to fold those down, sort of seal it, and you've got your piping bag. I've got a small hole at the bottom, so I will have to be careful that when I'm filling up my bag, my icing might well run out of that, but then I might not need to actually snip another hole. If you've rolled it a little bit tighter, then you might need to sort of snip a little hole to make it easier to pipe with, but we'll see how I go. So we're just filling up our homemade piping bag with our icing sugar, and then we can just pop that to one side while our biscuits are cooking. We do need to let our biscuits cool before we pipe them, otherwise our icing sugar will melt and go a bit blobby on there, and you might not get the precision to your icing. So you can just fill up your piping bag and then gently sort of squeeze the top and fold that edge down. So you've got your piping bag that you can just pop to one side, ready for when you start decorating your biscuits. So these are my biscuits just out of the oven, so they're nice and golden, and you'll notice they're not firm at the minute, because if we think of what happens to butter when we heat it, our butter is still liquid at the moment, so our biscuits are nice and hot. So don't worry that your biscuit isn't solid at the minute, just pop them to one side and allow them to cool. So once they've had a chance to cool, the last little bit is your decorating. So I've got my homemade piping bag, and then you can just be creative as you like in terms of popping some decorations on your biscuits. So we can make our snowman a bit more snowman-like with some eyes, nose and some buttons. And then our ginger person, again, we can decorate them in a very similar way. Whoops. A little line of buttons going down the middle of him. And then your star, you can be as creative as you like, so you can try and outline the edge of your star. And then just allow this icing to set, so it won't take all that long, and then you can store them in an airtight container and they'll be fine for a couple of days. And enjoy your biscuits.